Hi everyone, Dr. Bruce here. I thought what I would do in this video is give you another overview of tissues. I know tissues can be a difficult topic because when you first start looking at tissues, they all pretty much look the same. It's hard to tell the difference. So I know I've done other videos and learning activities on tissues, but I thought maybe I would do this one as if I were giving a short lecture to one of my face-to-face classes. Let's begin then with one category of tissue called epithelium. So this is an old picture, but I like it because it has all of the different types of epithelium in one picture. So the way you determine the type of epithelium is by the shape of the cell and the number of layers. So the shape of the cells are either flattened out, they're called squamous cells, they're a little bit thicker, they're called cuboidal cells, or even thicker, columnar cells. The number of layers then, if it's one layer of cells, it's called simple. If it's more than one layer, it's called stratified. So we have simple squamous, stratified squamous, and so on. Epithelium is a covering, and there's a trick to identifying epithelium in that there's always a space, a blank space, next to the tissue. So let's take a look at one of these. This is stratified squamous epithelium. See the space here? You look at the space and you look at the tissue right next to the space, that's epithelium because it's a covering. It functions as a cover. This is stratified squamous because it has multiple layers. In stratified squamous, the cells are bigger at the bottom and then they flatten out at the top. And an example of stratified squamous is the superficial layer of the skin called the epidermis, which consists solely of stratified squamous epithelium. All right, let's look at another one. This is cuboidal epithelium. Notice the space, and then right next to it is the tissue. So cuboidal epithelium is, like it says, little cubes, and it tends to line ducts. So a duct is like a little tube, and this tube is lined with cuboidal epithelium. So here's the space, there's the tissue. It's not flattened, so it's not squamous, and it's not tall, so it's not columnar, so it has to be simple cuboidal. One layer of cuboidal cells. Here is a picture of columnar epitheliums. This is actually what's called pseudostratified, another oddball category, but these are tall cells. So they're tall cells and they have little projections on them, these little protein filaments called cilia. And when you see pseudostratified columnar epithelium, it'll have cilia on it. So here's the space, here's the row of cells, and these are columnar epithelium. Now, they call it pseudostratified because it looks like stratified. It looks like multiple layers because the cells don't all line up, but it's really not. It's really one layer. So the trick to identifying this is look for the space. You know it's epithelium. Look for tall cells. It's columnar. If it has hair, it's pseudostratified. All right. So let's move on to a different category called connective tissue, which is a huge category. So how would you, determine whether or not a picture is of connective tissue? Well, one way is my soundbite for connective tissue is cells embedded in a matrix. So these little black things are all the cells, and then the rest of this is all a matrix. This type of tissue is called loose connective tissue, sometimes called areolar connective tissue. And it's the most loosely organized. There's very little organization here. It just looks like things are pretty much at random in the tissue. If you see something like this, there's not rows of cells, there's no space, it's loose connective tissue. This is very organized tissue. This is dense connective tissue. So this forms tendons and ligaments. So you see all these rows, it's kind of wavy rows here. That is dense connective tissue. A lot different from loose connective tissue, no organization. Dense connective tissue, very, very well organized. This one is called reticular connective tissue. This is found in the lymphatic system, and it's characterized by these branching fibers. See these black branching fibers? Those are called reticular fibers, and so this is reticular connective tissue. This one is pretty easy. This is adipose connective tissue. So these are adipocytes, which are cells that contain lipid or fat. You see these big sort of, big cells here. This is adipose connective tissue. You don't see the lipid because it's a very thin section. The lipid is gone, but these are the cells. Another example of connective tissue is bone, and nothing looks like bone. Bone, kind of looks like the inside of a tree, multiple trees. It has these structures called Haversian systems or osteons, and they consist of a central canal and then these concentric rings called lamellae. They also have these little spaces called lacuna or lacunae for plural, and these contain the bone-forming cells, the osteocytes. So if you see something that looks like this, it's bone. This is another connective tissue, and it's called blood. And a lot of you have seen slides of blood, so this one's fairly easy to identify. So remember my soundbite for connective tissue is cells embedded in a matrix. Here the cells are red blood cells, white blood cells, and then these fragments called platelets. The matrix is a fluid matrix, so this is a fluid connective tissue, and the matrix in blood is plasma. So what you'll see in blood, and we'll cover blood in more detail in another section of the course, is a lot of red blood cells. They don't have a nucleus. And then you'll see these cells that have a nucleus. These are white blood cells. And you'll get to identify these in another part of the course coming up. And then the blank space is the plasma, and the little dots here are platelets. All right, another connective tissue is another subcategory. Is called cartilage. So there are three types of cartilage. This one is the most famous, I would say. This is called hyaline cartilage. This is found at the ends of the bones. Now, one characteristic feature that you can help identify cartilage, it'll help you, is this little structure here. This is a cell with a hole around it, a cell in a chamber. It's called a chondrocyte, and the chamber is called a lacunae. So what you see in all cartilage is chondrocytes and lacunae. The way you tell the difference between cartilage is the matrix. So this is a smooth matrix. It's called a ground glass matrix. If you see this smooth, kind of clear looking matrix, it's hyaline cartilage. So you have chondrocyte and lacuna and ground glass matrix. So hyaline cartilage. This one is called fibrocartilage. So you still have the chondrocyte and lacunae, but you don't see it very well. What you see is this fibrous connective tissue, and fibrocartilage is found, one place it's found is in the discs in your spine. Those are called fibrocartilaginous discs. Later on when you study joints, you'll see this again. You'll also see it in what's called a symphysis, or the symphysis pubis. You'll see that in the skeletal and joint section. This is elastic cartilage. So again, you have the chondrocyte and lacuna arrangement, but then you have these dark stained elastic fibers. When you see all these fibers, it's elastic cartilage. So if we look at the cartilage again, the matrix is clear, it's hyaline cartilage. The matrix has a lot of fibrous tissue in it, it's fibrocartilage. The matrix has these black, elastic fibers, it's elastic cartilage. All right, let's look at muscle. Three types of muscles: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. This is skeletal muscle, so long red fibers that have stripes or they don't have stripes. This one has stripes called striations. So the striations are found in skeletal and cardiac muscle. If you see something like this long red cells with these ridges on them or ripples on them or stripes, it's skeletal muscle. Here's cardiac muscle. This also has striations. They're kind of faint, but cardiac muscle has a special structure called an intercalated disc. And this structure helps to conduct electrical impulses across, cardiac muscle, so that like your ventricle of your heart contracts synchronously. So that's cardiac muscle. Different from skeletal muscle, no intercalated discs. Here we have these dark structures here. They connect the cells together. This is smooth muscle, a little less organized, no striations on smooth muscle. So if you see this like red tissue, long red cells, and they're kind of loosely organized, that's smooth muscle. All right, lastly, let's take a look at nervous tissue. This is an easy one to identify because it has these large cells called neurons. This is a neuron, has a large process called an axon, and then this is the cell body. So you'll see these neurons embedded in a matrix, and then you know it's nervous tissue. It doesn't look like anything else. These little black spots are called glia or glial cells, neuroglia, and they help support the neurons. All right, so hopefully this will help you understand tissues. You can use this video as a review. And thanks for watching, and have a great day, and see you in cyberspace.